In this episode of my assignment breakdown series, which you guys have been loving, so it's making me inspired to do more, I'm going deep into my archive back to 2014. My goodness, I've been in Vietnam for a long time. The story, the first McDonald's opening in Vietnam. Yep, quite a historic moment. I remember this time in my career vividly, and pulling up the images, it's kind of sparked a lot of memories here, but I remember being confident. I remember being hungry, no pun intended, considering the story, and fiercely protective of my big clients, or at least kind of my only big client was the New York Times back then. I wasn't just their go-to photographer for Vietnam, where I live, but they were flying me all over the region for assignments throughout Southeast Asia. So every time I got a brief from them, my first thought was always like, crap, like I loved it. I was excited, but like, how am I going to make strong images out of this brief? Or at the very least, like, how can I shoot this better than the next guy? So I'll go through that assignment, tell you the brief, share some of my favorite images, and hopefully you'll pick up a couple little things along the way. This is just a way to give you some insight into the life of a professional working photographer. So quick little intro here. If you're new here, I'm Justin Mott, and welcome to my home here in Hanoi, Vietnam. I'm an assignment and commercial photographer based here in Vietnam, traveling the world, sharing my 20 plus years of experience with you. I also run AskMott.com, where you can find my one-on-one coaching, mentoring, workshops, and much more. All right, so first off, getting the assignments. Well, I mean, there's a long backstory there, a lot of work you got to build up, a portfolio, networking, and all that. I'm not going to go into that on every single episode, but typically once you have a working relationship with an editor at the New York Times, the assignment will probably just land in your inbox, or you'll get a quick feel like, hey, Justin, are you available? Here's the shoot, here's the time, here's the location. So once I said I said, can you fly to Ho Chi Minh City? McDonald's is opening in Vietnam. I first thought like, all right, cool, that's kind of interesting. And then I thought like, well, damn, it's not even open yet. So kind of like wheels already turning. Like, what are my visuals? Again, I go back to that, like, crap, what am I going to get that's going to illustrate the story? But this is where my photojournalist brain kicks in. This is my job, is to solve problems visually and to show, not tell. At the time, because people are interested in gear, I went through a brief little Nikon phase there. I even used a zoom. I went from zooms to primes, and then I went back to zooms for just like a little bit because I was doing so much assignment work. So I had like a 16 to 35. So you'll notice a couple of these shots are a lot wider than what I normally shoot. I did have a couple primes as well, my go-to fixed 35, but shortly after this, I switched back to Canon. Nothing wrong with Nikon, but I switched back to Canon and went back to my trusty primes. So every shoot for the New York Times, every shoot in general comes with pressure, but the New York Times just comes with a higher pressure for me because as a photojournalist, like that's where I wanted to land. And I got there, and I didn't want to lose that spot. And back then, they kept me in business. They were sending me multiple assignments a month. They paid horribly, but living in Vietnam, I could stretch my money and I could live comfortably. I mean, my rent back then was about $250 a month. Not bad, and it was like a decent apartment. My assignments back then were paid about $250 a day. Now, sometimes it was just a one-day assignment. It was $250 plus all your expenses, but that's not a great payday, and that really hasn't changed much since then. They pay like $350 now, so definitely don't pay well. So the story is interesting. It was about McDonald's coming to Vietnam, but it was also just about the fast food injection, American fast food coming into Vietnam. It represented a lot of, I don't want to go too deep into it, but a lot of different mixed feelings for me. Because like by this point in my life, I'd been in Vietnam for 6 years, and I was comfortable working here and adapting to the culture here the best I can. And visually, I loved it here, and culturally, I loved it here. And so many things I was adapting to, so many things I enjoyed and made me stay here. It wasn't just the work, I loved being here. It almost felt like everything I left behind in America was chasing me here. And then more importantly, like everything I left visually behind in America, stuff I wasn't really interested in, just the repetitiveness of the strip malls, the franchises, and how different it was here with the street food, and everything was different. Every street was different. Everything was so visual on the streets of Vietnam. It was so unique. You didn't see all these signs for fast food places, and that's what I fell in love with here. So it represented like a change of like, oh no, is this just gonna happen here too? And luckily I can say now in 2024, like it's changed a bit, but not how I thought at the time. I thought it was just gonna be everywhere. And so since McDonald's wasn't technically open yet, my focus was on branding and context. The article mentioned other fast food places like KFC and Starbucks and their recent entry into Vietnam, but this was really like about McDonald's launch, and that was really representing America and representing American fast food. So signs were popping up all over downtown Ho Chi Minh City, so I just wandered around, looked for those signs. I finally came across this like massive Big Mac sign right in downtown. And once I saw that, I just knew like, okay, this is my visual. Because without a physical store open yet, not be able to like capture people coming in and out and people eating there. I had nothing. Well, I didn't have nothing. I had this. This is what I had. So giant Big Mac sign in downtown, some other signage with words, but the Big Mac was just quite visual, right? So I just camped out there for like half a day. I figured this is the best spot to maximize my time. This is where I'm going to get my hero shot and maybe a couple other supporting shots. For a story like this, you never know. It might just be one lead image, but I needed, back then especially, they were running a lot of slideshows. I needed to get at least like 10 usable images, and I'll probably shoot hundreds and then maybe send like 15, and then they'll probably pick like 5 to 10. So like I said, I camped there half the day, people walking by, motorbikes parked in front, trying to bring people to Vietnam, motorbikes parked in front. I'm trying to bring people to Vietnam, not just show the picture of the sign. I need layers to bring people to Vietnam. So I was thinking like, okay, like street food vendors passing by. She had her whole little street restaurant with her, carrying her stools and her food. And I was like, okay, I just sort of waited for people to pass by, getting close, pulling back, trying to create these layers, and then looking for people posing in front of the Big Mac and just waiting on that and seeing like there was a lot of families, a lot of people posing in front of it, taking pictures. It was action. It was good. Because again, I don't want a picture of just a sign. I need more than that. And unfortunately, the sign is going to be the heavy part, but that's still not good enough to represent this story. I need more. I need to bring people to Vietnam, and I also wanted some moments in there as well. And then this group of kids pulled up in front of the sign. They were goofing around in front of it. I knew like, all right, like they were taking a lot of pictures. They were having fun with it. They all had like an interesting look to them. And I just sort of knew this was my lead. So I just worked it. I worked it. I just took pictures, pulled back, joked with them a little bit, got their names for captions. And then I just knew like, okay, that at that point, like halfway through the day, I knew I kind of had my lead shot, or I knew I had enough. But they hired me for a day, so I'm going to give them a day's worth. So then I went over to the McDonald's location. They weren't open yet. There was just signs in front. I went over there at sunset, and I got lucky because I had the golden arches were up, and that was just huge for me. But again, I don't want something just basic, just a picture of just the sign looking up. And I just worked that scene. It was sunset, so light was interesting, but the photo gods were good to me because the golden arches were reflecting a giant shadow on the street, and I was like, oh, this is awesome too. So like, another good example of just going out in good light, good things tend to happen. So that golden arches shadow on the street, and I just worked that and got lucky. Like a guy in a motorbike taxi was parked there, and I'm like, okay, I was greedy. I was like, oh man, it'd be awesome if he was like eating a sandwich, but he wasn't. But that would have been really cool if he had like a banh mi sandwich in front of a McDonald's. That would really illustrate sort of the two worlds and what I was trying to capture. It was in nice light, and I played with that reflection. I mean, I worked it. People thought I was just photographing the pavement for like hours, and they were fascinated with watching me photograph the pavement. Like, what is this guy doing? Why is he shooting the pavement so much? I'm just aimed down. I'm looking down. I'm photographing the arches, just trying to find like different things to bring people to Vietnam, people passing through the right light. Again, I wanted the banh mi, didn't get that, but I got the guy on the motorbike, brought people to Vietnam, or I thought I did a pretty good job bringing people to Vietnam. I just worked that scene sort of to death. And I don't eat meat, but man, after shooting those golden arches for so long, I was just like seriously craving like McDonald's French fries. The logo and the advertising actually worked. In addition to those shots, those two scenes, the Big Mac and the Golden Arches, I also wanted to create some sort of visual contrast and photograph the Vietnamese street food. A big part of what Vietnam is the street food and the scenes on the streets. And what drew me to Vietnam, and one of the things I love photographing, is people on the streets of Vietnam eating food, because it's such a huge part of the culture here. It's what people do: go outside, eat on the street, drink coffee on the street. So I wanted to show that as well. I wanted it all in one shot, sure, but I also wanted a couple shots just on its own. So just looking for street stalls, looking for people on the streets eating, empty stools, empty plates, alleyways. I wanted to compare and contrast these two different worlds. I also mixed in some shots of like Baskin Robbins. I went to a Starbucks. That was really hard to shoot. Didn't really get anything good there. But I just want to cover myself. I want to work. I want to give my clients the maximum options and just show them I'm working it to the bone. Again, I'm always thinking about like, hey, I'm lucky to be hired. I still think this way at 46 years old. Like, I'm lucky to be hired. Someone else wants this job. I need to be hungry. I need to work, and I need to give them their money's worth. Even if it's not a lot of money, I always give them the money's worth. Overall, it turned out a lot better than I thought, to be honest. Like when I first got the assignment, I was just thinking like, all right, pictures of signs, like this is going to suck. I had a lot of assignments like that, pictures of signs, and that's like you go to, but for the New York Times and at that higher level, you need to expand on that. Overall, there's nothing like the rush of an assignment for me still to this day, solving problems on the fly, the fast-paced editing to get the images back to New York and then seeing them in print the next day. It's fun. It was an exciting part of my life because I was doing this nonstop. I still take on assignments these days, but I do a lot more commercial work, and I'm quite selective on my editorial assignments because I can be, but also just because they pay really terrible. I do, I'm not gonna lie. But I still love the thrill, still love the adventure, and still love the unknown. And I like to, it's a good test for myself too. I love that. So Wrapping up, here are my favorite shots from this assignment. Here's just like maybe my top 3 to 5. We'll see what I decide to choose here. Let me know what you think, which ones you think are the best. If you guys have any questions on what it's like to be a professional photographer or questions about the shoot, I'm quite active in the comment section, so ask away. I'm here to answer. I'm here to help. And also, don't forget to check out my online store, askmott.com, for one-on-one virtual classes, workshops. I do have a workshop here in Vietnam in March, another one in December. Check all that out at askmott.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to have a wonderful day.